Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl. And we've got another Warhammer Community article continuing from yesterday, the Old World Almanac, which is how the Orc and Goblin tribes are meant to play. So this came out on Tuesday, the 19th of March. As I said yesterday, I'm a little bit behind, trying to catch up, and that's because I am on the road travelling with work. But let's see what they say about Orc and Goblin tribes. Obviously, we've already seen these guys in the main book, in the Ravening Hordes book, but now we've got the Arcane Journal, the Armies of Infamy, and let's see what else they put in there. I haven't done a faction focus. In fact, Orcs and Goblins are a long way off in terms of faction focus for me. I'm just about to start the Dwarf Mountain Holds, and we're doing all the Forces of Fantasy first before moving on to the Ravening Hordes book. So we've got a way to go before we're getting Orcs and Goblins. But let's see what they say in the article. So we've talked about the Arcane Journal, speaking with the designers about how they want the Unruly Lights to play. Okay, nice looking army there. Right then, so the number one thing to understand is that more or less through Warhammer Fantasy Battle era, Orcs and Goblins suffered from animosity. Okay, in Warhammer the Old World they do not. And there's a very good reason for this. They are aggressive and they want to get across the battlefield and get stuck in. Interesting. Animosity, that's like always been a key part of the Greenskins. So various iterations of animosity in Warhammer Fantasy battles render this army unplayable to a greater or lesser extent. From a competitive standpoint, absolutely, because when you're looking at competitive armies, you try and reduce the RNG as much as possible for reliability, for as much as possible as you can in any dice game, but animosity was just a massive additional RNG factor that could really cause you problems. Yep, so when you've got a unit refuses to move instead of shooting or even charging, as they did in 4th edition, it's not fun. So they become impetuous instead. So a reminder here of what impetuous is, which basically means declare charges. If during the declare charges and charge reactions subphase of its turn, a unit that includes one or more impetuous models is able to declare a charge, roll a d6. A 1 to 3, the unit must declare a charge, and a 4+, the unit may act as normal. So basically, it's forcing you into charges if you can declare a charge, which is fine. Again, it's a 50-50 on losing control of your movement. And so you're going to have to think a little bit more about how you play. Okay, so yeah, Tony, we've been asked why war bosses are impetuous. That's because they're also orcs. Black orcs are a bit smarter, but in general, orc battle plans are usually no more complex than you go there, you go there. Okay, fine. I don't think this is it's certainly not as bad as old animosity, because worst case, what you're going to charge. Absolute worst case, you don't make that charge, but in between worst cases, you make the charge and you charge and do some damage. So not terrible. It's just it's going to be very difficult to manage specific formations like you could do with other factions. Okay, when there's nobody else around, orcs will 100% fight among themselves. When there's enemies stood a few hundred, they're more concerned with clear. And that's fair. That's absolutely true. Right, orcs are fast across the ground. Okay, now if you can get that charge off on your terms, it will be devastating. Yeah. If you wait for the opponent to approach and they get the drop on you, you'll be beaten up. So basically, always be charging is what they're trying to say. ABC, remember that, always be charging. Fitting for a greenskin army. Right, most Orc and Goblin units are warband units, so they're full of confidence when everything goes their way. As soon as something goes wrong, Bravedo's gone, they run for the hills. So warband, a reminder of that rule, and we have done videos on the universal special rules, but unless it is fleeing, a warband gains a positive modifier to its leadership characteristic equal to its current rank bonus, to a maximum leadership of 10. However, a warband cannot use this modifier to its leadership should it ever choose to make a restraint test. And in addition, if the majority of the models in this unit have this special rule, it may re-roll its charge roll. So this is pretty cool. You've got nearly all the greenskin units apparently having warband, so they can nearly all re-roll their charge rolls. Awesome. That's really good. And you're getting a bonus to your leadership from the ranks. So pretty nice. So with these two unique universal special rules, the magic item spells make them faster and more aggressive. Yeah, so it says your opponent can draw you out for long charges that you may well fail, and you'll get countercharged. I think the interesting thing with the orcs is, of course, how many units you can put on the table, because you just get a few units that end up charging forwards that get baited out. They get countercharged, but then you charge back with your units you really care about. So it's a bit of a backwards and forwards. Okay. Yeah. As for other rules, I feel like choppers encapsulate straightforward design of orc armaments. Reroll to wound on the charge makes such a big difference to the casualties you cause when you're hit. You really feel it. Absolutely. So yeah, during a turn which it charged, a model with this special rule may reroll rolls to wound of a natural 1. And you get +1 AP, which is nice as well. So yeah, all good. Right, orcs are the best battle cry, so why not use it? Stacking these bonuses up makes orcs amazing. They're very strong, but their weapon skill's not great. Seldom hitting on better than 4s, but they're often hit back on 3s. That's deliberate. Orcs tend to be swinging with their weapons and hoping for the best. But if they hit you, it's going to hurt you, which makes sense. So I think that Games Workshop have always tried to inject flavour, the flavour of a faction into its rules. A lot of the time it doesn't pay off, but I think in the old world they've done a pretty good job on the bulk of the factions and the bulk of the units in the factions. So I have to say, they have really tried to come up with a rule set. I'm not going to say it's the tightest, most competitive rule set out there, because it's not, and Games Workshop has never been in that category. But I do think they've managed to get some flavourful rules into each faction that work with the main rule set without being too cumbersome, without hindering a faction too much, and without making them too overpowered at the same time. So I think as a start, it's in a reasonable place. Okay, so War once per game during the command subphase of their turn, this character may attempt to invoke the power of the War by making a leadership test. If this test is passed, until your next start of turn subphase, this character, their mount, and any orc unit they have joined may re-roll any rolls to hit of a natural 1. When calculating the combat result, you gain an additional bonus of +1, which is good. There you go. Very nice. As it says, stacking that up can be very nice. So you're going to be interesting thing. If you've got War with choppers, you're re-rolling hits of 1. You're re-rolling wounds of 1. You've got an additional AP of 1, and you get an additional +1 combat result point. They're not going to be bad in combat. Right, throwing spears. These aren't ranged weapons like javelins. They're combat weapons thrown over the head of the orc in front of you. Get the charge, add in magic items like Big Red Raggedy Flag or the War Banner. Cast Here We Go with a Shaman, and your army will shift across the battlefield with tremendous aggression and then hopefully cause some hits. The big downside of orcs is that they're tough, but they don't wear much armour. So high strength shooting attacks with just a little AP will hurt. Things like crossbows, handguns. Orcs hate being shot at with anything that's strength 4. Absolutely makes absolute sense. And is pretty, again, standard for greenskins. Tough, but not much armour. Orcs don't like dwarf gun lines. But if there's an army in the game that can charge you in turn 2, it's orcs and goblins. Okay. So yeah, it's the always be charging. But that's for me why I kind of, I gravitate. I like the Black Orc Night Goblin combo. Some Goblin War Machines in there as well. So you've got some range stuff in there, some Goblin Shamans, Night Goblin Shamans. We've got Fanatics now, released the Fanatics, which is cool because I love my Night Goblins. So Fanatics are not placed on the battlefield at the start of the game. Instead, make note of which Night Goblin unit include Fanatics and how many. Yep. Okay. A concealing unit may release one or more of its Fanatics during any start of turn subphase. These are great. I just think it's awesome. When a Fanatic is released, it travels through the air to land spinning several feet away from its concealing unit before embarking on its erratic battlefield journey. To represent this, place the model so its base is within 3 inches of its concealing unit, not touching the base of any models. Okay. So, yeah, Night Goblin Fanatics more straightforward than they used to be. They don't interrupt the game with a mid-move pause. They won't win you the game outright. And there are ways to deal with them, but they put people off charging. Yeah, absolutely. Charging a Night Goblin line is always a risk. Okay. They're there for psychological warfare, which, yeah, kind of makes sense, though really the thing about Fanatics was more just the random damage. They could either go off crazy or they could do not much if they went in a random direction. And yeah, making holes in your own army, absolutely. Absolutely. Right, in terms of list building, I really like the variety. Even though there are units you'll see in most lists, there'll be different armies. So he personally likes a unit of big uns and giants. Trolls are good, boar boys, but they'll always be people's pet units, and it's quite nice that they're perfectly fine to put in your list. And that's what I was saying. I think in a lot of cases, there's always going to be units you look at in an army list and go, my God, that unit's awful. Right, and they're probably rarely taken. But I think in most cases, most of the units are absolutely viable on the battlefield. And as it says there, people will have their pet units. I say mine is Night Goblins, Black Orcs, and Doomdiver Catapults. He likes Trolls and Big Uns, which aren't really my flavour. So you might want to field lots of Goblins, Wolf Riders, and Chariots for a fast-moving army. And I think, yeah, Orcs and Goblins really do lead into this. You can lean into Orcs, you can lean into Goblins, you can lean into the Trolls side of it, or you can mix and match, and that's great. Variety in this sort of thing is great as long as it's all viable. And I think things like these Armies of Infamy will only help make some of these more esoteric army lists of focusing on Trolls or focusing on cavalry more viable, which is a good thing. However, it's not an army you can be infinitely tactical with because almost everything is impetuous or stupid, which is absolutely true. I do have Orcs and Goblins. I do like playing them, but they're certainly not among my favourite armies. Where I prefer sort of my Vampire Count, which is my sort of War of Attrition style, heavy magic with some absolutely ridiculous characters and rubbish everything else. And I like my Dark Elves, where you've got real tactical flexibility, precision, you've got speed, you've got hard-hitting shooting, melee, monsters, but you're not that tough. So I do have greenskins, they're fun to play, but they're certainly not my favourite. Okay, so if you're going to bring Trolls, it's worth considering your general. With a war boss on a Wyvern who's looking to fly off and disrupt the back line, suddenly your Trolls are relying on their own leadership to pass stupidity. These little synergies make the difference of how functional your army is. So take a hint there, if you're going to go for a full-on Troll-style army, having a general that's flying off on his own is probably not a good thing. Okay. And I mean, this is a basic comment they make there, which is, you look at the weaknesses and you mitigate them. That's pretty much standard for most armies. The flip side of that is you find your strengths and you lean into them as much as possible and you rely on it, but you still always want to find some mitigation for your weaknesses. Okay, so they focused on putting a lot more synergies in every army in the old world. I would agree with that. I think they've done that to a large degree. And we'll see more of that as we see more Arcane journals arrive. I think players are already realising there are quite a lot of combos to be found with magic items, and unique special rules. Absolutely. And on the previous videos I've done, there's been a whole bunch of people that have mentioned some of those combos. And, if you've found some combos and you're happy to share them with the community, feel free to comment down below and let us know what combos you particularly like in terms of a unit with magic items, and unique special rules. And that looks like we've come to the end of the article. So tomorrow we're looking at all the lovely vintage miniatures coming back on a made to order. So made to order article coming out on Wednesday, and we'll round out the week in the world of legend with a guide to painting Orc and Goblin skin tone. So I don't generally cover painting articles, but I do cover model releases, rules, and sort of general discussion stuff. So there we go. That brings us to the end of this article. I hope you enjoyed it, ladies and gentlemen. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why in the comments down below. And if you want to continue seeing content, as we move into these faction focuses now and continue receiving content in terms of news and updates, and I also want to start reporting on tournament results, though, I'm certainly reliant on non-local tournaments for people to let me know that these tournaments exist, where they exist, how many people were playing, what the results were, or pointing me to websites where there is an English translation at least, so we can look at the results and look at the army lists and start to get an idea of where things sit. I would much appreciate any direction in that regard. You've been watching The Ghost Owl, and I'll see you all very, very soon.